Hey guys, Hector Castillo, Poppy from girlschase.com. Today I want to talk about how to ask girls questions without interviewing them. Most guys, when they're talking to girls, they have trouble, one, knowing what to say at all, and two, when they're talking to girls, they make it fucking boring and they don't have a way for her to enjoy herself through the conversation based on curiosity, where the guy is actually asking her penetrating questions, asking her interesting questions, and getting to know her really, and instead is interviewing her like it's a job position to suck his dick. And that's, well, I guess that could be fun. Hey girl, give me your CV to suck my dick. That might be fun. But the way that they conduct these interviews is not in a fun sexual way. It's a, where are you from? You know, what do you do for a living? It's boring as fuck. So what we want to try and do is help you ask girls questions, because you do have to ask her questions. You can't just sit there and stare at her and hope you guys are gonna fuck. I've thought about trying that one day, just doing a silent seduction. I'm sure I could pull it off if I tried enough. But you're gonna have to ask her questions. Now, before we get to the actual video, you're gonna have to meet the girls to benefit from the video. And to meet the girls, you have to approach them. And to approach them, you might need to be able to recognize their signs of interest. Maybe you need some confidence boosts, and maybe you need some tips on how to approach them anywhere. Well, we can help you with that with this free 7-day mini course right here. It's also in the description. I've mastered this fancy little card description. I need to make it, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so check out the video course and it'll help you get to the point where you're actually talking to her and asking her good questions. And okay, back to the video. So, how do you ask girls good questions that make them feel like this is an actual fucking conversation and not just an interview? My first tip is tone. What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? Night and day, right? Where are you heading? Where are you heading? These small changes might seem kind of simplistic to you, but they make all of the difference in the world. Because one way to understand a seduction is that she is interpreting you through the only senses that she has, which are the 5 senses. And if you count thought as a 6th sense, as they did in ancient India, then that would be the 6th sense-fold system, as the Buddha called it. But let's talk about the 5 senses. So what are they? Touch, smell, sound, right? So she has to hear you. That's one of, I think your voice, besides your smile maybe, is probably the most seductive thing that you have, because it's the instrument through which you're expressing yourself and giving most of your game. There is non-verbal game, so physical game. And then there's your fundamentals, the way you look at her, the way you smile. But most of the conversation, because we're social beings and not animals, and even animals, right? They're using their mating calls, right? Their mating call of one fucking hippopotamus might be more sexy than the mating call of another hippopotamus, because it vibrates and it has whatever it is that hippopotamus bitches and hoes are into. I don't know, I haven't tried to seduce any of them, but they probably are into a certain type of tone and frequency and resonance than another male, because his resonance and frequency and vibration and the way that his voice hits her brain is going to have a different effect than if another hippopotamus did it. I can't believe I'm using hippopotamus as a fucking example. The way that you say, hey, where are you from? And then another guy says, where are you from? They can have a totally different effect. It's a total body experience. It's the 5 senses. It's how you look, it's how you sound, it's how you feel. But a very important part of a seduction is how you sound. So your tone can change everything. I would suggest everyone has this, I'll do a video on how to make a sexy voice. Remind me, right, yes, okay. You have a natural frequency that would be considered deep, right? Because I could go deeper like this, and I guess to some girls it might sound sexier, but it's a little bit forced. I sound more natural at this point, but it's my deepest natural point, and I've been told by girls that they find it sexy. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, not sure. But one of the tips is that I'm using my diaphragm. And I learned this from doing martial arts and learning how to, right? So you know how to say it from your, oh, you told me not to yell. And then I yell into the fucking, and you speak from this. And that's going to vibrate in a very attractive way. And another tip with tone is to vary the high points and the low points of how you express a question. So where are you from, right? A question ends in an uptone, but then you can have variation in the sentence before that. Where are you from? And obviously don't be like ridiculous, like, what do you do for a living? That would be weird. But you can play with it, and your voice is an instrument. So find tones while you're asking simple questions that you find attractive and interesting, and you're gonna get feedback from the girl. You're gonna see girls perk up a little bit when you're like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, oh, you know, you just see their change, and it's a feedback, and it's a trial and testing thing. So vary your tone, play your voice like an instrument, and that'll make those simple questions much more interesting and not feel like an interview. Because if you're in an interview, so why are you here for this job? What interests you about this job? Or what interests you about this job? What do you like about it? Totally different. Okay, so work on your tone. Second tip is you can assume questions instead of asking them. So you're walking up to a girl during the day and you ask her, hey, what are you up to? That's one of my favorite questions to ask girls because it's good for screening for logistics, and it's a simple question to ask a girl. So you walk up to her, hey, I think you're pretty, blah, blah, blah. So what are you up to? What you can say is based on the context. If it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so you're heading back from work. It's a question, but it's more of a statement, really. Oh, so you're coming back from work. Or if you're at the grocery store, I swear to God, if you're at the grocery store and it's like dinner time and she has a basket full of shit and you're like, oh, you're cooking dinner? I know that sounds like really simple observation, but women who like you, they just need something to go off of. So you can make the most simplistic of statements, and that'll give them the fodder with which to create a further conversation. Well, buying dinner? Duh, of course. You know, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I just got off work, and I'm buying groceries, of course I'm buying dinner. But she's gonna say, yeah, you know, I'm having a friend over, and we haven't seen each other in a long time. If you have any experience with girls, you can know that you can ask the most simple question, and that allows them to talk. Girls just want an excuse to talk because they fucking love to talk. When they talk, they actually get high. If you look into the female psychology, they get pleasure from talking. That's why they talk so much. Now, there's evolutionary reasons for that that I don't want to go into too much here, but basically, they just need a reason to talk. And so making an assumptive statement, an assumption based on the context or an observation, can flip the script and make it feel like it's no longer an interview, but an actual conversation. Plus, it demonstrates a lot of attractive qualities about you as a man. You have emotional intelligence, you're observant, you're actually involved in the seduction, and that's going to pique her interest and make you different from most of the guys who approach her and, what's your name? How are you? Where are you from? Okay. Now, you can also go back to asking questions instead of assumptions, but what you can do is you can add some creativity to the way that you're asking a question. This comes from reading a lot. If you're a reader, you're gonna be exposed to many different types of sentences because you've read so many books. Or if you're good at writing, now you're good at constructing. Writing is just reading, but backwards. So if you read a lot, you're usually gonna be a decent writer. And so if you're a decent reader or writer, you're gonna be able to come up with interesting, creative questions, and you're gonna change a normal question of, where are you from? In my mind, I heard this voice. It was like, where are you from? And this weird like English accent voice came to me like, where do you hail from? From which country are you coming? No, okay, you don't want to be like a 17th century weirdo, but you do want to ask things, just slight variations. So if you're talking to a girl and she says, you know, I am a doctor. And instead of saying, why are you a doctor? You can say, what made you get into the medical field? Same question pretty much, but now there's enough variation to the question that she's not getting that voice in her head's like, oh, here comes the same old question. Now you're like, oh, why'd you get into the medical field? And it's like, oh, okay, oh, you know, it just creates an interesting, creative, unique moment for her. and allows the conversation to feel a little bit more natural. I know these aren't significant tips, but they, in their simplicity, they are actually significant, because these rudimentary questions, you don't always have to go through them, but usually they're good places to start. You know, if something's common, then it's usually decent, but what most people fail to do when they're doing common things that are accepted as social norms is that they don't make them interesting. So it's okay to ask normal, basic, boring questions, but by adding tone to it or making an assumption instead of a question, but it still has the same value, or just changing the word order, or adding extra words to making it more interesting. Like instead of, I'm a doctor, you say, oh, that's cool. So then why did you get these small additions or reductions and changes in the variation and the creativity of the questions makes it less of an interview and feels more like a unique, natural conversation. Okay, the last tip that I have is going to be the most important, besides tone, because tone can be applied to making your assumptions sound better or making your creative questions sound better. But now what I want you to focus on, and this is the real mark of a great conversationalist, because this is what I'm teaching you, is how to be a good conversationalist. How do you ask penetrating questions? Now, the penetrating questions usually come after the initial basic interview questions are asked. So what do you do for a living? I remember the best example was when I was in college. I was at a bar and I met a girl and she said she's studying physical therapy. The question that I asked her was, that's interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that, so it was an assumption at first, and then it turned into like a penetrating question. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that maybe when you were younger, like you had a significant experience with like a physical therapist. Did you like break your leg or something? And I guessed what was going on, and then I made it sort of like, I'm being curious. So there was tonal change in there, like I'm guessing, right? And then there's an assumption in there, and then there's a creative way of asking it, but adding all of those, basically add all the previous tips together. And then what you can do is you can create very interesting questions like that. Like you must have had some sort of experience, or someone must have inspired you. I think that's what I asked. Did someone inspire you when you were younger? Did you have like a great experience with a physical therapist? And she's like, yes, like her eyes she was like, actually, yeah. Like when I was X years old, I was in a car accident and I broke my leg. And I had a physical therapist work me through it and help me learn how to walk on that leg again. And she was really inspiring with the way that she did it. And I just thought it was so helpful of a thing to do in your life. And it's a very nice passion to have. And yeah, it just had a huge mark on my life. And that's why I want to be a physical therapist. That's a conversation, guys. That's a fucking seduction. A seduction is when a girl feels sexually attracted to you, but also she's like, wow, this guy is different, right? Because most guys she's gonna talk to, she's not gonna fuck. She could be one of the biggest sluts in the world. But girls, how many guys they're meeting on a regular basis, they're only gonna sleep with a fraction of those, even if she is very promiscuous. And girls who aren't very promiscuous, you need to realize quantitatively that they're gonna sleep with a very small majority of the men that they meet. So what makes those men different from the rest of the men out there? And that is these specific special moments where he asks that one question. The conversation goes from, okay, he's cute, we're having fun, to, okay, there's something different here in this seduction. There's something unique about this. What's with this guy? Why is he so different? Because most people are boring. Most people are very average and they're very boring. So there's something different and special about you when you ask a question like this. And actually what was great about this question too, is later on her friends tried to like test me and cockblock me. And she took a moment, she's like, hey, you know, you like my friend, right? She's like, yeah. She's like, what do you like about her? And I was like, oh, well, I think she's this and that. She's like, yeah, those are just like qualities that any guy could say. Tell me why you really like her. And it was like a very important moment. And then I remembered the conversation we had, and I said, well, actually, she told me this one story where she was young, she broke her leg, blah, blah, blah. And halfway through me telling the story, she's like, okay, you're cool, you got it, yep. And then I went home with that girl and she sucked my dick like 4 times. So asking these questions can also help with cockblocks. And it's going to make the seduction unique, special, and make it feel like an actual seduction, not an interview where you're trying to fuck her. Okay, this is Hector Castillo, Papi, girlschase.com. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do not forget about the 7-day free mini course in the description. Also, I have a book out that this story is actually in the one that yes, it is. The story I just told is in my college book. Interesting how things happen. Okay, so if you want to check that book out, I have tons of stories in there that tell the crazy experience that was my 5 years of college, because I took a victory lap like a fucking loser, but I'm glad I did. And it also teaches you how to do college game, how to go through college, make friends, meet girls, get high status, how to deal with reputation, gossip, etc. But even if you're not in college, it's still a very useful book because it teaches you the fundamental principles of social circles, of dealing with reputation and gossip, which happens your whole life, not just in college. You're always gonna deal with these principles in your friend groups. And if you wanna sleep with girls and make friends, it's a great book to help you do that. So that's in the description, my book called King of College, and I'll also put a link right here for you to get it, okay? Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. See you soon.